I don't know what my son sees in you. You'll never be good enough for him. Leave before you ruin more lives, Warren snarled, his eyes narrowing as they bore into me across the dinner table. My hands trembled, clinking my fork against the plate. What did I ever do to you? I managed to stammer, my voice barely above a whisper. Just being you was enough, he retorted coldly, not even blinking. The tension in the air was suffocating. Jaden sat beside me, his jaw clenched and face pale. I glanced at him, hoping for support, but he seemed as stunned as I was. Warren's words cut through the jovial atmosphere we had started with when we first arrived. Now it felt like those words were crumbling around us. It had been a typical family dinner, or so I thought. Jaden's mother, Diana, had filled our plates with roast chicken and mashed potatoes, while his sister, Mallory, chatted about her latest project at work. Things were going well until Warren decided to speak his mind. Elena, don't let him get to you, Mallory murmured from across the table, her voice a soft plea. Warren shot her a withering look. Mallory, stay out of this. You have no idea what kind of woman she really is. Jaden finally found his voice. Dad, that's enough. His voice was firm but tinged with a shaky anger. I could see him wrestling with his loyalty towards his father and his love for me. Warren ignored him. You think she loves you? She's after your money. Doesn't matter how long she plays this game, it's always the same. A gold digger. Stop it, Warren. Diana's voice quivered. She reached out to touch her husband's arm, but he brushed her aside. Mom, Dad, this is not fair, Jaden said, standing up, trying to get between us. I love Elena, and she loves me. Warren scoffed. Love? You're naive, Jaden. You think a woman like her at her age isn't looking for financial security? I felt my face burn with anger and humiliation. I have a career. I've worked hard for everything I have. I don't need Jaden's money. Warren's laughter was dry and sharp. Sure, keep telling yourself that, but we all know the truth. Jaden's fists clenched at his sides. Dad, that's enough. His voice was louder now, echoing in the dining room. If you can't accept Elena, then maybe we shouldn't come here anymore. Warren's eyes gleamed with a cold satisfaction, like he'd achieved what he set out to do. Maybe you shouldn't. I rose from my seat, feeling a sharp sting of betrayal. I think it's time we leave, I said softly, grabbing my coat from the back of the chair. Jaden grabbed his car keys, his face set in a hard line. Yeah, let's go. We walked out of the house, the door closing firmly behind us. The night air was chilly, matching the iciness that settled in my heart. As we reached the car, Jaden stopped and turned to me. I'm so sorry, Elena. I didn't think he'd be this way. I looked at him, feeling a mix of sadness and love. It's not your fault, Jaden. But what are we going to do? I don't know, he admitted, the hopelessness in his voice breaking my heart. As we drove away, I couldn't shake Warren's words from my mind. Was this the beginning of a rift too deep to mend? The night felt darker than it should, and the road ahead seemed long and uncertain. The night after dinner at Warren's, I laid awake, staring at the ceiling. The humiliation from Warren's words stung deeper than I wanted to admit. Jaden was beside me, fast asleep, his breathing steady. I envied his ability to shut everything out, even if just temporarily. The next morning, I sipped my coffee in silence as Jaden sat across from me, his face clouded with worry. Elena, he started, unsure of how to continue. I put my cup down, looking at him. You don't need to say it. Your father has made his feelings very clear, Jaden. What I don't understand is why. He's just protective, Jaden sighed, rubbing his temple. He thinks everyone is out to take advantage of us. That still doesn't justify his behavior, I replied, feeling a sharp edge in my voice. I know. Jaden looked defeated, but he has this way of making me doubt everything. I stood up, pacing the kitchen. The wooden floor creaked under my feet. Jaden, you know me. You know I'm not looking for anything but a life with you. Why is that so hard for him to accept? Jaden stood and took my hand. I believe you, I do. But Dad, he's not easy to change. My phone buzzed with a notification. A text from Mallory. Hey, can we meet up? Need to talk about last night. I glanced at Jaden and showed him the message. Go, he said, dropping my hand. Maybe she can provide some insight. I met Mallory at a small cafe downtown. She looked anxious, her fingers tapping on the table as I sat down. Elena, I'm so sorry for how Dad treated you, she began, her voice shaky. He's always been this way, ever since... Ever since when? I asked, leaning forward. Ever since Uncle Leonard came back into our lives, she admitted, looking over her shoulder as if expecting Warren to appear. What do you mean? I asked, puzzled. Leonard has always been the schemer, stirring up trouble. Dad became more paranoid and controlling when Leonard returned from overseas. She ran a hand through her hair. I think they're plotting something against you. Why would they do that? I whispered, despite myself. Because they believe if they push you away, Jaden will stay loyal to the family business. My heart sank. So it's about control and power? Mallory nodded. Dad thinks Jaden will choose the family over you? And Leonard, well, he just enjoys the games. Thanks for telling me, I said, squeezing her hand. But this just makes everything even more complicated. I'll help in any way I can, Mallory promised. But I need to be careful. If Dad finds out I'm helping you... I understand, I assured her. We need to be smart about this. Driving back home, I mulled over Mallory's words. Warren wasn't just worried about me as a person. He saw me as a threat to his control. And Leonard? He thrived on deceit and manipulation. Opening the front door, I found Jaden waiting, the worry lines on his forehead deepening. What did Mallory say? I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. Warren and Uncle Leonard are working together. They see me as a threat. It's about control, Jaden. They fear losing you to anything outside their influence. Jaden's face darkened, anger flickering in his eyes. I can't believe they're going this far. We need to be strong, I said, taking his hand. We need to stand together. Jaden nodded. We will, Elena. We'll fight this. Together. Looking into his eyes, I knew the road ahead would be challenging, but we would face it side by side. We wouldn't let Warren's manipulation destroy us. A week passed, and the tension between Jaden and his family showed no signs of easing. I tried to focus on my work, but the anxiety lingered like a shadow. Every vibration of my phone made my heart skip, fearing another attack from Warren or Leonard. One evening, Jaden arrived home, looking more stressed than usual. Dad's not stopping, he said, dropping his briefcase on the couch. He's enlisted Uncle Leonard to dig up dirt on you. My stomach churned. Great, just what we needed, I muttered, sinking into the chair. Jaden sat next to me. We need to be careful, Elena. Leonard is known for his dirty tactics. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from Mallory. Heads up, Leonard and Dad are spreading rumors about you to the family. Stay strong. I showed the message to Jaden. They're really pulling out all the stops. Jaden's face hardened. I won't let them do this to you, to us. Just then, the doorbell rang. Jaden opened it to reveal Leonard standing there, a smug look on his face. Hello, nephew, Leonard said smoothly. Mind if I come in? Jaden's jaw tightened. What do you want, Leonard? Leonard glanced at me, feigning surprise. Oh, is this a bad time? This isn't a social call, and you know it, I said, stepping forward to stand beside Jaden. Leonard smirked. Well, since you're here, Elena, let me be blunt. You're not welcome in our family. Get to the point, Leonard, Jaden snapped. Warren and I have been talking, Leonard continued, and we think it's in everyone's best interest if Elena steps away from the family and from you, Jaden. You can't be serious, Jaden said, his voice trembling with anger. Leonard shrugged. We're completely serious. She's a liability. The rumors, well, they're gaining traction. Even your mother is starting to have doubts. I felt a surge of anger. These lies won't destroy us, Leonard. We'll see about that, Leonard said, his eyes glinting. You might find that fighting against family is more than you can handle. Jaden took a step closer to Leonard. You're playing a dangerous game. I won't stand by and let you ruin our lives. Leonard chuckled. Family comes first, Jaden. Always has, always will. Think about it. With that, he turned and walked out. Jaden slammed the door shut, his face red with frustration. You okay? I asked, reaching for his hand. He shook his head. I hate them for this. How could they do this to their own family? We'll get through it, I assured him. We just need to stay one step ahead. The next few days were a blur of whispered conversations and sideways glances from Jaden's extended family. Rumors spread like wildfire, accusations about my past, lies about my intentions. Even at work, I could feel the cold stares from coworkers who'd heard the gossip. Meeting Mallory in secret became our only way to stay informed. They're painting you as a manipulative gold digger, she said one afternoon, her eyes filled with regret. They're relentless. But why? I asked, frustrated. Why go through so much trouble? They think it's the only way to keep control. she answered softly. They're trying to protect the family business. They don't care who gets hurt along the way. I won't let them win, Mallory, I vowed. The line between family and enemy had been drawn. Warren and Leonard's actions were setting the stage for a confrontation that was brewing just beneath the surface. Jaden and I were determined to stand united, even as the storm clouds gathered overhead. These battles weren't just about us anymore. They revealed the lengths people would go to for power and control. But no matter what, we would fight back together. The tension was almost unbearable. Each day at work was fraught with whispered rumors and sidelong glances. Jaden and I tried to keep our heads down, but the pressure was mounting. Warren and Leonard's influence had far-reaching consequences. Even Mallory started to distance herself, fearing repercussions. One night, Jaden came home looking exhausted. His tie was askew, and he threw his jacket over the chair. "Dad ambushed me at the office today," he said, rubbing his temple. I approached him, concerned. "What happened?" "He tried to interrogate me about our relationship. He's convinced you're hiding something." Jaden's voice was filled with frustration. "Did you tell him anything?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Of course not. But he doesn't believe me. He's convinced you're not who you say you are, and Leonard? He's too good at what he does." "We need to do something," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "We can't just sit back and let them tear us apart." Jaden nodded. "I know, but I feel stuck. Every time I try to talk to him, it just gets worse." The next morning, I decided I'd had enough. I texted Warren, asking for a meeting. Jaden was hesitant, but he finally agreed. "Just be careful," he warned. I arrived at Warren's office, my heart pounding. The receptionist led me into a large, imposing room where Warren sat behind a massive desk. He didn't even look up as I entered. "You wanted to see me?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. Warren finally looked up, his gaze icy. "So you've decided to confront the dragon in his den?" I ignored his sarcasm. "We need to put an end to this, Warren. Your manipulation is tearing us apart." He leaned back in his chair, a cruel smile curling his lips. "I'm only protecting my family, something you know nothing about." "You're not protecting anyone," I shot back. "You're controlling and destroying relationships." Warren stood, his eyes flashing with anger. "You think you can just come into my family and take what you want? You're nothing, a nobody." I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "I love Jaden, and he loves me. You can't change that with lies and manipulation." "You're delusional," Warren sneered. "Jaden will come around. He'll see the truth about you." "He already knows the truth," I replied firmly. "And he's chosen me." Warren's face darkened. "You don't belong here. Leave now, and maybe things will settle down. Otherwise, you're going to regret you ever stepped into this family." I left his office with my heart racing, but my resolve strengthened. I wouldn't let Warren intimidate me. When I got home, Jaden was waiting. "How did it go?" he asked anxiously. "Not well," I admitted. "He's not backing down." Jaden paced the room, fists clenching and unclenching. "We can't keep living like this, Alina. Maybe we should take a break. Let things cool down." I felt like the floor had been pulled out from under me. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I need time to think," Jaden said, his voice breaking. "We're under so much pressure. I can't think straight." "Jaden, please," I pleaded. "Don't let them win. We can fight this together." "I don't know if I can," he whispered, tears welling in his eyes. "I'm so sorry, Alina." He left that night, deciding to stay at a friend's place for a while. As the door closed behind him, I felt a cold, numb sensation creeping over me. Warren's plan was working, and I was losing the one person who mattered most. Jaden's decision to take a break hit me like a ton of bricks. Each day without him was a struggle. The house felt empty and cold, every corner reminding me of what I was losing. I barely slept, my mind racing with thoughts about Warren and Leonard's relentless scheming. One evening, unable to sit idle any longer, I decided to dig through my own files and emails, hoping to find something to counter Warren and Leonard's lies. Hours passed with nothing. Frustration gnawed at me until I stumbled upon an email chain that caught my attention. Sent to an unfamiliar address, it was filled with malicious intent and vivid descriptions of plans to eliminate me from Jaden's life. My heart raced as I realized the sender was Leonard, and the recipient was Warren. The messages detailed their relentless plot to sow discord and manipulate Jaden. I immediately called Mallory, my voice shaking. Mallory, I found something. You have to see it. We met at a coffee shop, and I showed her the emails on my laptop. Her face paled as she read through them. This is insane, Alina. They're worse than I thought. We have to show this to Jaden, I said. Mallory nodded. Let me reach out to him. Maybe he'll listen to me. Later that evening, Mallory texted me, Jaden's coming over. Be ready. When Jaden arrived, his face was tense and tired. Mallory said you found something? I nodded, leading him to the kitchen where my laptop was set up. It's better if you see for yourself. He read the emails, his expression shifting from confusion to shock, then to a slow-burning rage. These are from Dad and Leonard? About you? Yes, I said softly. They've been manipulating you, Jaden. This is proof. Jaden's hands trembled as he closed the laptop. All this time, I can't believe they would go this far. I took a step towards him. Jaden, we can fight this together. But you need to see what they're really doing. He nodded, his eyes brimming with determination. You're right. We need to confront them. This can't go on. We decided to face Warren and Leonard together, arranging a meeting at Warren's house. Mallory insisted on coming along for support. The tension as we walked into the house was palpable. Warren and Leonard sat in the living room, looking smug and confident. So you've come to your senses, Jaden? Warren asked, a sneer playing on his lips. Jaden's voice was firm. We know what you've been doing, Dad, manipulating, trying to tear us apart. Warren's expression didn't falter. I've done what's best for you, Jaden. Jaden slammed the laptop on the table, opening the incriminating emails. This is what's best for me? Lies and manipulation? Leonard leaned forward, his smile fading. You don't understand. No, you don't understand, Jaden interrupted. You've lost my trust, and you won't get it back. Warren's eyes narrowed. Elena is poisoning you against us. This is your doing, not hers, Jaden shot back. We're done with your games. Mallory finally stepped forward, her voice steady. I support Jaden and Elena. You two are toxic, and it's time we all saw it. Warren's face contorted with fury, but he said nothing. Jaden took my hand, his grip reassuring. We're leaving, and we won't be coming back. As we walked out, I felt a surge of relief. Warren and Leonard's hold on Jaden had broken, and together we were stronger. It wouldn't be easy, but we had exposed their deceit. The road to healing had begun, and for the first time in weeks, I felt hopeful about the future. Jaden and I spent the next few days gathering our strength. We knew the confrontation had just begun. Armed with the truth, we set a plan in motion to reveal Warren and Leonard's deceit to the entire family. We decided to call a family meeting at Jaden's parents' house, ensuring that the extended family would be present. Jaden invited everyone, making it clear that this was a matter of urgency. Warren and Leonard might have thought they could manipulate the situation, but this time we would control the narrative. The family gathered in the large living room, filled with murmurs of confusion and curiosity. Warren and Leonard sat in their usual chairs, their faces steely and unreadable. Jaden stood beside me, gripping my hand for support. Thank you all for coming, Jaden began, his voice strong. We have something important to discuss. For weeks, Elena and I have been victims of lies and manipulation orchestrated by my father and uncle. A murmur ran through the room. Warren leaned forward, a sneer on his face. This again, Jaden? Haven't we had enough of this nonsense? It's not nonsense, Jaden replied, his voice unwavering. He turned to Mallory, who stood up and began playing the emails on the big screen. Silence fell over the room as Leonard's and Warren's voices filled the room, their cold, calculating words undeniable. The shock on the family's faces was evident, and whispers of disbelief spread like wildfire. How could you do this? Jaden's aunt muttered, glaring at Warren. Warren's face turned red with rage. You think this proves anything? It's all taken out of context. Context, Jaden's voice rose. You manipulated and lied to push Elena out of my life. This isn't love or protection, it's control and deceit. Leonard tried to interject. We were protecting the family, Jaden. Sometimes harsh measures are necessary. Harsh measures? Mallory snapped. This is cruelty, plain and simple. Jaden's mother, Diana, stood up, her face pale. Warren, is this true? Have you been lying to all of us? Warren looked around, his confidence wavering. I did what I thought was right, but Jaden, he's blinded by her. She's not one of us. Jaden's voice shook with emotion. Elena is more family to me than you've ever been since this started. She didn't deserve any of this. Warren stuttered, but Jaden cut him off. Enough. I'm done with your lies. This ends now. The room was tense, every eye on Warren and Leonard. Jaden turned to the family. From this day forward, we cut ties with them. Their influence ends here. We rebuild without lies. Diana, with tears in her eyes, nodded. I'm so sorry, Jaden, Alina. I didn't know it had gone this far. Jaden squeezed my hand. We're moving forward as a family, but only with those who support us, who value truth. Warren stood up, his face contorted with fury. You're making a big mistake, Jaden. No, Jaden replied, his voice steady. For the first time, I'm making the right choice. As Warren and Leonard left the room, the weight of their influence seemed to lift. The family began to rally around us, offering apologies and support. Jaden drew me close, his arm around my shoulders. We did it, I whispered, feeling a sense of relief washing over me. Jaden nodded, his eyes determined. This is just the beginning. Together, we can face anything. The reckoning had come, and while the road ahead was still uncertain, we knew we'd taken the first step towards a future free from deceit. With every obstacle overcome, our bond grew stronger, proving that love and truth would always prevail. As the door closed behind Warren and Leonard, a heavy silence descended on the room. The air felt charged with the weight of everything that had happened. Jaden and I stood together, still processing the enormity of what we'd just done. Diana approached us, her face lined with worry. Jaden, Alina, I had no idea they were capable of this. I'm so sorry. Jaden sighed, his shoulders relaxing slightly for the first time in weeks. It's not your fault, Mom, but we need to move forward. Mallory stepped in, her eyes resolute. Rebuilding won't be easy, but we can do it, together. Jaden nodded. First, we need to make sure Warren and Leonard can't harm us any further. Their influence needs to end, both in the family and in the business. I turned to Jaden, my voice steady. We will, Jaden. We'll figure this out. The next morning, Jaden and I began the process of distancing ourselves from Warren's business. It was clear that to reclaim our lives, we needed to establish independence. I decided to dive back into my marketing career, focusing on what I had built for myself before all this chaos. Meanwhile, Jaden started exploring opportunities to start his own enterprise. Each evening, we sat together, discussing ideas, plans, and the future we envisioned without the shadow of Warren's control. One late afternoon, Jaden came home, his face lit with excitement. I found a potential investor for a new project. This could be a fresh start for us. I smiled, proud of his determination. That's amazing, Jaden. Let's make it happen. We met the investor, an old friend of Jaden's, who was eager to support his vision. As plans solidified, it felt like a burden lifting off our shoulders, replaced by a sense of purpose and hope. Amidst all this, one evening, Diana called, her voice filled with a newfound resolve. Jaden, I think it's time we talked about your father. I need to explain why he's become so bitter. Jaden and I visited Diana the following weekend. She welcomed us into the home that had seen so much turmoil, her expression both sad and determined. Warren wasn't always like this, Diana began, her voice soft. There was a time when he was full of hope, just like you, Jaden. But life has a way of hardening people. What changed him? Jaden asked, leaning forward. Diana took a deep breath. It was Leonard's return from overseas. Warren had always felt a duty to protect the family, but Leonard's influence made it worse. He stirred up old insecurities, convinced Warren that everyone was out to take from him. It turned him into this controlling figure obsessed with power. I listened, feeling a pang of empathy despite everything Warren had done. That kind of fear can destroy people, I said quietly. Yes, Diana agreed. Doubt and fear consumed him, and he took it out on those he should have loved the most. Jaden's face was filled with a mix of anger and sadness. He's hurt us all so much. I know, Diana said, tears in her eyes, but understanding his past doesn't excuse his actions. It just helps us see the full picture. Jaden nodded, reaching for my hand. We won't let his past dictate our future. We're carving out our own path now. In the weeks that followed, Jaden's new venture began to take shape. We poured our energy into creating a future built on trust and mutual support. Mallory, freed from Warren's oppressive influence, found her own voice, contributing to the family in ways she'd been too scared to before. Despite the confrontation and the revelations, healing had begun. Warren and Leonard's fall from power left a void, but it also provided an opportunity for growth. We were no longer defined by the bitterness that had once threatened to tear us apart. As Jaden and I stood together, looking towards the horizon, we knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. But for the first time, it felt like our own. And that made all the difference. Warren's fall was more profound than anyone could have anticipated. Once a titan of influence, he now found himself ostracized by both his immediate and extended family. Word of his and Leonard's manipulations spread quickly, turning allies into skeptics and friends into critics. Jaden and I watched from a distance as Warren's once impenetrable empire began to crumble. He had alienated everyone who mattered, and now he was paying the price. It was hard not to feel a mix of satisfaction and pity. One evening, as we were settling into our new routine, Jaden received an unexpected call from his mother. Her voice was heavy with concern. "Jaden, it's your father. He's not handling this well. Can you come over?" Jaden looked at me, uncertainty in his eyes. "Should we go?" I nodded. "He's still your father. Let's see what's going on." When we arrived, Diana led us into the living room where Warren sat, staring blankly at the wall. His once sharp and commanding demeanor was now a shadow of its former self. "Jaden, Elena," Warren said, his voice lifeless. "I suppose you've come to see the defeated king." "Dad," Jaden began, almost pleading, "this didn't have to be this way. You pushed everyone away." Warren's eyes hardened momentarily. "I did what I thought was right, for the family." "And look where it's gotten you," I said, unable to keep the bitterness out of my voice. "You hurt so many people, including your own children." Diana touched Warren's arm gently. "It's time to let go of this thirst for control, Warren. It's destroying you." For a moment, the old Warren seemed to surface, his eyes flashing with the stubborn pride that had defined him for so long. But it faded quickly, leaving behind a man broken by his own machinations. Jaden took a deep breath. "Dad, you need to understand that we're moving forward without your influence. We're creating our own lives now." Warren looked at Jaden, truly seeing him for perhaps the first time in years. "I just wanted to protect you." "By manipulating and deceiving us?" Jaden shook his head. "That's not protection, Dad. That's control, and it's over." We left Warren's house that evening with a sense of finality. The old power structures had fallen, and in their place, we were building something new and honest. Mallory, emboldened by the changes, finally stepped out of the shadows. She openly supported Jaden, cutting ties with the toxic patriarchy that had held them captive for so long. Her transformation was inspiring, and it further solidified our resolve to pursue a life free from manipulation. Jaden's new business started to gain traction, and my career continued to flourish. We found a balance, supporting each other in ways that strengthened our relationship. Trust and communication became the cornerstones of our lives, our bond reaffirmed through every challenge we faced. One crisp autumn afternoon, Jaden and I sat in our new home, planning our future. The past months had been a whirlwind, but we had emerged stronger and more united. "Do you think he'll ever change?" I asked, referring to Warren. Jaden looked thoughtful. "I don't know, but we can't wait around for him to. We have our own lives to lead." I nodded, feeling a deep sense of gratitude and peace. "We've come a long way, Jaden." "Yes, we have," he agreed, taking my hand in his. "And we'll keep moving forward, no matter what." The journey had been tumultuous, but we had found our footing. We reclaimed our lives from under Warren's shadow, turning manipulation and deceit into lessons of resilience and hope. The future was ours, a tapestry of love, trust, and unbreakable unity, free from the venom of a bitter lineage. Together, we had triumphed. I jolted awake, my heart pounding in my chest. The recurring nightmare of finding that damning email on Aaron's laptop had become all too familiar lately. As I reached for my phone to check the time, the harsh glow of the screen confirmed it was well past midnight. Aaron still wasn't home. I sighed deeply, the frustration and loneliness I'd grown accustomed to settling in once more. When had our marriage taken such a sharp turn? Aaron used to be the most attentive and loving husband a woman could ask for. But over the past few years, his obsession with work had consumed him, leaving me to fend for myself more often than not. Memories of our early years together flooded my mind. The way he used to look at me, his eyes sparkling with adoration, the spontaneous weekend getaways and romantic gestures that made my heart flutter. Those were the moments that had made me fall head over heels for him. The moments that had convinced me he was my soulmate. But lately, those moments had become few and far between. Aaron's constant business trips and late nights at the office had driven a wedge between us, and the distance only seemed to be growing wider with each passing day. As I lay there staring at the ceiling, I couldn't help but wonder if the suspicious email I'd found was just the tip of the iceberg. Was Aaron really working as hard as he claimed, or was there something or someone else occupying his time? The thought made my stomach churn, but I couldn't ignore the nagging suspicion any longer. I had to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. With a heavy heart, I rose from bed and made my way to the home office. Aaron's laptop sat closed on his desk, as if taunting me with the secrets it held. I took a deep breath and opened it, my fingers trembling as I navigated to his email inbox. There it was, the message that had set off this whirlwind of doubt and mistrust. A innocuous-looking email from an unknown sender, but with a subject line that made my blood run cold. "Can't wait to see you again, my love." I felt the tears welling up in my eyes as I read and reread those words, each time feeling like a knife to my heart. Was this proof of Aaron's infidelity? Or was I simply letting my insecurities get the better of me? One thing was certain, I couldn't let this go unanswered any longer. As soon as Aaron walked through that door, I was going to demand answers, and if he was lying to me, there would be hell to pay. The sound of Aaron's key turning in the lock sent a jolt through my body. I quickly minimized the incriminating email and composed myself, my heart racing in anticipation of the confrontation to come. As he stepped through the door, Aaron's eyes went wide with surprise at seeing me still awake. "Marta, what are you doing up so late?" I fixed him with a stern glare, the anger and hurt I'd been bottling up for months finally bubbling to the surface. "Where have you been, Aaron? And don't give me that working late excuse again." He sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. "I told you it's this big project I'm overseeing. It's a make-or-break deal for the company. And yet you have time to send flirtatious emails to other women?" I spat, slamming the laptop lid shut with a bang. Aaron's face drained of color. "What are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb with me," I shouted, shoving the printout of the damning email in his face. "Who is she, Aaron? Tell me right now, or so help me." He recoiled, holding up his hands in a placating gesture. Whoa, calm down. It's not what you think, I swear." I scoffed, feeling the tears of betrayal stinging my eyes. "Really? Then what is it, Aaron? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been carrying on an affair behind my back." Aaron's jaw clenched, and for a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of guilt cross his features. But just as quickly, it was gone, replaced by a mask of indifference. "You're overreacting, Marta. It's just a harmless flirtation, nothing more." "Harmless?" I echoed, my voice dripping with disbelief. "How can you stand there and lie to my face like that?" He sighed again, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Look, I'm sorry if I gave you the wrong impression, but I promise you there's nothing going on. This project has just been incredibly stressful, and sometimes I let off a little steam by flirting online. It doesn't mean anything." I stared at him, searching his eyes for any hint of sincerity, but all I found was a cold but detached gaze that chilled me to the bone. In that moment, I realized that the man standing before me was a stranger, a far cry from the loving, attentive husband I had once known. "You know what, Aaron?" I said, my voice low and trembling with barely contained fury. "I don't believe a word you're saying, and if you think I'm just going to sit back and let you continue to disrespect me and our marriage like this, you've got another thing coming." Aaron's brow furrowed, and for a brief moment I thought I saw a flicker of concern in his eyes. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by that same infuriating nonchalance. "Marta, please," he said, reaching out to touch my arm. "Don't do anything rash. We can work through this, I promise." But as I jerked away from his grasp, I knew in my heart that there was no going back. The trust that had once been the foundation of our relationship was shattered beyond repair, and no amount of empty promises could fix it. "Save it, Aaron," I spat, turning on my heel and heading for the bedroom. "I'm done listening to your lies. From now on, you're going to have to face the consequences of your actions." As I slammed the door behind me, cutting off any further protest from Aaron, a single thought ran through my mind. If he thought this was over, he had no idea what was coming. The shrill ring of my phone jolted me from my restless slumber. I squinted at the caller ID. It was my older sister, Beth. "Hello?" I croaked, my voice still thick with sleep. "Marta, it's me. I'm sorry for calling so early, but I just had a feeling something was wrong," Beth said, her tone laced with concern. I sighed deeply, the weight of the previous night's confrontation with Aaron settling back onto my shoulders. "You could say that." There was a brief pause on the other end of the line. "It's Aaron, isn't it? What did that bastard do this time?" Despite the gravity of the situation, I couldn't help but crack a small smile at Beth's protective nature. She had never been Aaron's biggest fan, always claiming there was something off about him that she couldn't quite put her finger on. "I found an email on his laptop," I began, the words catching in my throat. It was from some woman calling him my love and saying she couldn't wait to see him again. Beth let out a low whistle. "Wow, he's not even trying to hide it anymore, is he? That slimy son of a bitch." I shook my head, even though she couldn't see it. I confronted him about it last night, but he just brushed it off as harmless flirtation. Like that's supposed to make it okay? "Of course he did," Beth scoffed. "Men like Aaron think they can get away with anything. They lie and cheat and manipulate, and then expect us to just roll over and take it." Her words struck a chord deep within me, fanning the flames of anger and resentment that had been simmering since my discovery. She was right. I had spent far too long letting Aaron walk all over me, making excuses for his behavior while he carried on without a care in the world. "Well, not this time," I said, my voice taking on a steely edge. "I'm not going to just sit back and let him continue to disrespect me like this." There was a pause, and then Beth spoke again, her tone slightly softer. "What are you going to do, sis?" I took a deep breath, the beginnings of a plan formulating in my mind. "For starters, I'm going to gather more evidence. If he thinks he can just sweep this under the rug with a few empty promises, he's got another thing coming." "That's my girl," Beth said approvingly. "You document every little thing, every shady email, every suspicious phone call. Build an airtight case against that lying snake." I nodded, feeling a newfound sense of determination coursing through my veins. "And that's just the beginning. By the time I'm through with him, Aaron is going to wish he never laid eyes on that other woman." Beth let out a low chuckle. "Atta girl. Give him hell, Marta. He deserves every bit of it and more." As I hung up the phone, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For too long I had been the victim, the dutiful wife pushed aside and disrespected by her unfaithful husband. But no more. From that moment on, the tables were turned, and Aaron was the one who would be made to pay for his transgressions. With a newfound sense of purpose, I got to work, meticulously documenting every shred of evidence I could find. Phone records, credit card statements, anything that could shed light on the depths of Aaron's betrayal. And as the incriminating trail grew longer, so too did my thirst for vengeance. Because at the end of the day, there was one thing I knew for certain. Aaron Thompson was going to get exactly what was coming to him, and I was going to be the one to deliver it. Over the next few weeks, I became a woman possessed, consumed by the singular goal of exposing Aaron's infidelity once and for all. Every spare moment was dedicated to tracking his movements, scouring through phone records and credit card statements for any shred of evidence that could shed light on his betrayal. And slowly but surely, the pieces began to fall into place. Late-night calls to an unknown number, charges for fancy dinners and hotel rooms that certainly weren't for business purposes. It was all there, right in front of me, a damning paper trail that left no doubt in my mind that Aaron had been carrying on an affair behind my back. But it wasn't until I stumbled across a series of flirtatious text messages that the full picture finally came into focus. The woman's name was Clara Evans, a 30-year-old project coordinator at Aaron's firm. And from the looks of things, she and Aaron had been involved in a torrid affair for quite some time. The messages made my stomach churn. The pet names, the suggestive language, the blatant disregard for the sanctity of our marriage. It was all there in black and white, a brutal reminder of just how little Aaron seemed to care about me or our vows. As I sat there, staring at the damning evidence before me, a wave of anger and humiliation washed over me. How could he do this to me? To us? After everything we'd been through together, how could he so callously throw it all away for some cheap fling with a woman half his age? In that moment, something inside me shifted. The hurt and betrayal I'd been feeling gave way to a burning desire for revenge, a primal need to make Aaron pay for his transgressions in the most public and humiliating way possible. And that's when the idea struck me. I knew from the messages that Aaron and Clara had plans to meet up for a romantic dinner that weekend at a fancy restaurant downtown. The perfect setting for a little surprise reunion, I thought to myself with a wicked grin. The next few days were a blur as I meticulously planned every last detail. I booked a reservation at the restaurant under a fake name, ensuring I'd be seated close enough to Aaron and Clara's table to cause maximum disruption. I even went so far as to have a new dress tailored. A slinky little number that was sure to turn heads and make Aaron realize exactly what he was throwing away. Finally, the night of reckoning arrived. As I stepped into the restaurant, my heart was pounding with a heady mix of nerves and anticipation. But the moment I spotted Aaron and Clara sitting in a cozy corner booth, all traces of doubt melted away, replaced by a steely resolve. "Well, well, well," I announced loudly, striding toward their table with purpose. "Isn't this just a cozy little date night?" Aaron's head whipped around, his eyes going wide with shock and fear as he registered my presence. "Marta, what are you doing here?" I fixed him with a withering glare, reveling in the way he seemed to shrink under my gaze. "Oh, I think you know exactly why I'm here, Aaron. This little charade of yours has gone on long enough." Clara, for her part, looked equally stunned, her perfectly made-up face twisted into an expression of abject horror. "Aaron, what's going on? Who is this woman?" I let out a derisive snort. "I'm his wife, you little homewrecker, the one he's been lying to and cheating on for God knows how long." The restaurant had gone deathly silent, all eyes trained on our dramatic confrontation. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew I should feel embarrassed, ashamed at causing such a public spectacle. But in that moment, I couldn't bring myself to care. Aaron was the one who should be ashamed of the lies, the betrayal, the utter disrespect he'd shown me in our marriage. And I was going to make sure the whole world knew it. "This little date ends tonight," I spat, leaning in close so only he and Clara could hear me. "You want to know what real karma looks like, Aaron? You're about to find out." The aftermath of my dramatic confrontation at the restaurant played out like a surreal blur. Aaron and Clara had scrambled to gather their things and beat a hasty retreat, their faces twisted in matching expressions of shock and humiliation. As for me, I simply stood there, reveling in the stunned silence that had fallen over the dining room, savoring the sweet taste of revenge. It wasn't until I got home that the full weight of what I'd done finally hit me. As the adrenaline wore off, a nagging sense of doubt began to creep in. Had I gone too far? Would Aaron ever be able to forgive me for such a public shaming? I shook my head, steeling my resolve. No, I couldn't afford to second-guess myself now. Aaron was the one who had brought this upon himself with his lies and infidelity. If anything, he should be grateful I hadn't done worse. Still, when he finally stumbled through the door a few hours later, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of apprehension. His face was pale, his eyes haunted, and for a brief moment I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "Marta," he began, his voice little more than a hoarse whisper, "what you did tonight, I don't even know what to say." I fixed him with a cold, hard stare. "You don't have to say anything, Aaron. I think my actions spoke loud and clear." He winced, as if my words had physically struck him. "I know, and I deserved every bit of that humiliation. But please, you have to believe me when I say that Clara means nothing to me. It was just a fling, a moment of weakness that I deeply regret." I scoffed, shaking my head in disbelief. "Do you really expect me to buy that? After everything you've put me through, all the lies and the sneaking around?" Aaron's shoulders slumped, and for a moment he looked utterly defeated. "You're right, I don't deserve your trust or your forgiveness. But I swear to you, Marta, from the bottom of my heart, I will spend every day making it up to you if you'll just give me another chance." His words hung heavy in the air, and for a brief moment, I actually found myself considering his plea. A part of me, the part that still clung to the memory of the man I had once loved, wanted desperately to believe that he could change, that we could somehow find our way back to the happiness we'd once shared. But then another voice, sharper and more insistent, cut through the haze of doubt. This was just another one of his lies, another empty promise designed to lull me into complacency while he continued his despicable behavior behind my back. Well, not this time. You know what, Aaron? I said, my voice taking on a steely edge. I think I will give you another chance. His head snapped up, his eyes shining with a glimmer of hope. Really? Oh, Marta, thank you. You won't regret this, I swear. I held up a hand, cutting off his effusive gratitude. Don't thank me just yet. This is your one and only chance to come clean, to tell me everything about your affair with Clara and any other indiscretions you might have been hiding from me. And if I catch you in even the smallest lie, so help me God, you'll wish you'd never been born. Aaron visibly paled, but to his credit, he didn't back down. You have my word, Marta. No more lies, no more secrets. I'll tell you everything. I swear it. I nodded, fixing him with a hard stare. Good. Then you'd better start talking. And Aaron, I added, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, don't leave anything out, because I promise you I will find out eventually. And when I do, there will be hell to pay. As Aaron began to spill his sordid tale, I couldn't help but feel a twisted sense of satisfaction. He might think he was being given a second chance, but in reality, this was just the calm before the storm. Because no matter what he said, no matter how convincingly he begged for forgiveness, I knew in my heart that our marriage was already dead. Aaron had made his choice, and now it was time for him to face the consequences, and I would be the one to deliver them. In the days following Aaron's tearful confession, I did my best to play the part of the forgiving wife, nodding along as he laid out his grand plans for rebuilding our trust and making amends. But on the inside, I was already plotting my next move. True to his word, Aaron had come clean about the sordid details of his affair with Clara, but what he didn't know was that I had already set the wheels in motion for a far more sinister revenge, one that would make his indiscretions with that little homewrecker seem like child's play. It was Ethan, my old friend from college, who had first tipped me off. A private investigator by trade, he owed me a favor after I'd helped him out of a jam a few years back. And when I reached out to him about digging into Clara's background, what he uncovered was a tangled web of lies and deception that went far deeper than any of us could have imagined. Turned out, Clara's fling with Aaron was about more than just satisfying her twisted desires. No, this was a calculated move, a long con designed to bleed my husband's company dry from the inside out. She's been embezzling funds for months, Ethan explained, sliding a thick manila envelope across the table towards me. Funneling money into offshore accounts, using Aaron's access codes and inside knowledge to cover her tracks. I felt my blood run cold as I flipped through the damning evidence. Bank statements, wire transfer records, all of it meticulously documented and irrefutable. But how? How could she possibly have gotten her hands on that kind of sensitive information? Ethan shrugged, his expression grim. Your guess is as good as mine, but from what I can tell, she's been playing Aaron like a fiddle this whole time, using their affair as a way to keep him blind to her real motives. A wave of nausea washed over me as the full weight of Clara's deception hit me. Not only had the little snake been sleeping with my husband, but she'd also been using him as an unwitting pawn in her twisted game, putting his career and reputation on the line, all for her own selfish gain. In that moment, any lingering shred of sympathy or pity I might have felt for Aaron vanished, replaced by a burning desire to see him, and Clara, get exactly what they deserved. We have to take this to the authorities, I said, my voice trembling with barely contained rage. Get that bitch arrested and make sure Aaron gets dragged down with her for aiding and abetting her crimes. Ethan nodded grimly. You got it. I'll make sure this evidence gets into the right hands, anonymously, of course. Can't have anyone tracing it back to us. I nodded, a grim smile tugging at the corners of my mouth. Of course. We'll let the wheels of justice do their work for now. But make no mistake, Ethan, by the time this is all over, Clara and Aaron are going to wish they'd never crossed me. As I left Ethan's office, I could already feel the weight of Aaron's deception lifting from my shoulders, replaced by a sense of grim satisfaction. For too long, I had been the victim, forced to suffer the humiliation and heartbreak of his betrayal in silence. But not anymore. Now, the tables had turned, and it was Aaron's turn to face the consequences of his actions. And this time, there would be no second chances, no empty promises or tearful apologies. This time, he was going to learn the true meaning of karma, and I was going to be the one to deliver it. The days following Ethan's revelation about Clara's embezzlement scheme were some of the most tense and emotionally charged of my life. As much as I tried to maintain a facade of normalcy around Aaron, the simmering fury and resentment I felt towards him made it nearly impossible. Every time I looked at him, I saw not the man I had once loved, but a pathetic fool who had been so blinded by his own selfish desires that he'd allowed himself to be used as a pawn in Clara's twisted game. The thought of it made my skin crawl. Still, I knew I had to keep my composure, at least for the time being. Ethan had assured me that the evidence he'd uncovered would be more than enough to bring Clara's crimes to light, but we needed to bide our time and let the authorities do their work. Of course, that didn't stop Clara herself from trying to worm her way out of the impending disaster. About a week after my meeting with Ethan, I received a frantic call from the little snake herself, practically begging me to meet with her in private. "Please, Marta," she pleaded, her voice thick with desperation. "I know you must hate me after everything that's happened, but I swear I never meant for things to go this far." I scoffed, barely able to contain my disgust. "Save it, Clara. I know all about your little embezzlement scheme and how you've been using my husband as your own personal patsy." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line, and for a moment I thought she might try to deny the accusations. But then, in a small, defeated voice, she spoke again. "So that's what this is all about," she murmured. "I should have known Ethan would come crawling back to you eventually." I felt a surge of satisfaction at the realization that she knew the jig was up. "That's right, Clara. Your little game is over, and you're going to pay for what you've done, both to me and to Aaron." There was a pause, and then she let out a bitter laugh. "Aaron? Are you kidding me? That spineless worm was just as complicit in all of this as I was. He knew exactly what was going on, and he was more than happy to turn a blind eye as long as he got to keep sticking his pistache." "Watch your mouth," I snarled, cutting her off mid-sentence. "Aaron might be a lying, cheating scumbag, but he's still my husband. And trust me, he'll get what's coming to him, too." Clara let out a derisive snort. "Yeah, right, like he'll ever face any real consequences for his actions. Men like him always seem to skate by, while the rest of us take the fall." I could hear the bitterness and resentment dripping from her words, and for a brief moment, I almost felt a twinge of pity for her. Almost. "Well, not this time," I said, my voice taking on a steely edge. "I'll make sure you both get exactly what you deserve, one way or another." There was a long pause, and then Clara spoke again. Her tone resigned. "Fine. Do whatever you have to do. Just let me know when and where you want to meet. I at least owe you that much." I smiled grimly to myself, already formulating a plan. "Don't worry, Clara. I'll be in touch, and when I do, you'd better be ready to face the consequences of your actions, once and for all." As I hung up the phone, I couldn't help but feel a sense of grim satisfaction. The endgame was finally in sight, and soon both Clara and Aaron would learn the true meaning of karma, and I would be the one to deliver it. The weeks following Clara's arrest were a whirlwind of chaos and turmoil. As the sordid details of her embezzlement scheme came to light, the shockwaves reverberated through Aaron's company, leaving a path of destruction in their wake. At first, Aaron tried desperately to distance himself from the scandal, claiming ignorance and pleading his innocence. But as more evidence of his involvement surfaced, the illicit use of his access codes, the suspicious wire transfers, the damning paper trail that seemed to implicate him at every turn, it became increasingly clear that he was far from the unwitting victim he claimed to be. I watched from the sidelines as his once promising career went up in flames, his reputation dragged through the mud, and his professional life left in tatters. A part of me, the part that still clung to the memories of the man I had once loved, felt a twinge of sadness at seeing him brought so low. But that small flicker of sympathy was quickly extinguished by the knowledge of the depth of his betrayal, not just to me, but to the company he had sworn to serve faithfully. In the end, he had proven himself to be just as selfish and morally bankrupt as Clara, willing to sacrifice everything for the sake of his own twisted desires. As the dust began to settle and the legal proceedings against Clara moved forward, it became clear that Aaron would likely avoid any serious jail time, at least for the time being. The evidence of his direct involvement was simply too circumstantial, the prosecutors claimed, and without Clara's full cooperation, nailing him for aiding and abetting her crimes would be an uphill battle. I should have felt relieved, I suppose. After all, seeing the man I had once loved rot behind bars was never my intention. But as I watched him slink away from the courthouse, his head hung in shame and his once bright future reduced to ashes, I couldn't help but feel a sense of hollow victory. Because as much as the authorities might have let him off easy, there was no escaping the fact that his life as he knew it was over. The lies, the betrayal, the utter disregard he had shown for me and our marriage, it had all caught up to him in the end, and now he would be forced to face the consequences for the rest of his days. A few weeks later, as I was packing up the last of my belongings in preparation for my move to a new city, a fresh start, far away from the painful memories of our life together, there was a tentative knock at the door. I already knew who it would be before I opened it. "Marta," Aaron said, his voice barely above a whisper. He looked haggard, his once handsome features etched with lines of shame and regret. I wanted to apologize one last time, for everything. I regarded him coolly, feeling nothing but a hollow emptiness where the love and affection I had once felt for this man had resided. "Your apologies mean nothing to me now, Aaron. You made your choices, and you'll have to live with the consequences." He nodded, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "I know, and I deserve every bit of it after the way I treated you. He trailed off, shaking his head. "I hope that someday you can find it in your heart to forgive me." I let out a bitter laugh. "Forgive you? Aaron, you're lucky I didn't have you thrown in jail alongside that little tramp you were so eager to risk everything for." A flicker of pain crossed his features, but he didn't argue. We both knew I was right. "Just go, Aaron," I said, my voice heavy with finality. "Go and try to pick up the pieces of the life you've ruined. As for me, I'm done. Our time together is over, and I'm ready to start fresh." He opened his mouth as if to protest, but then seemed to think better of it. With one last lingering look, he turned and walked away, disappearing from my life for good. As I watched him go, I felt an unexpected sense of peace wash over me. The long, arduous road to revenge was finally at an end, and while the journey had been painful, the satisfaction of seeing karma served made it all worth it in the end. A new chapter was beginning, I realized, one free from the lies and betrayal that had haunted me for so long. And as I took one last look around the empty house that had once been our home, I couldn't help but smile. Revenge might be bittersweet, but it was exactly what I needed to reclaim my life and move forward, stronger and more resilient than ever before.